If you saw a woman in 1925 with a jaw that glowed in the dark, you wouldn't call it magic, you'd call it a death sentence. While the world remembers the Roaring Twenties for its rhythmic jazz, shimmering flapper dresses, and a sense of newfound freedom, there was a silent, radioactive poison flowing through the very veins of the American beauty industry. Tonight, we aren't just looking at vintage photos of a bygone era, we are peeling back the skin of history to reveal the skeletal horrors that American women endured for a fleeting chance at glamour. Close your eyes and listen closely, because what you're about to hear is a side of the American dream that was buried in a lead-lined coffin. Before the FDA had any real power to protect consumers, the American vanity market was a wild, unregulated frontier. The Great War had ended, and for the first time in history, young women across the United States had their own pocket money and an insatiable desire to reinvent themselves. But the tools they used to achieve this modern look were often more suited for a laboratory's biohazard bin than a lady's dressing table. Take, for instance, the deadly obsession with radiant skin. In 1920s America, radioactivity wasn't seen as a threat, it was marketed as the ultimate health miracle. Products like Tho Radia, a French-American collaboration, promised a luminous, healthy complexion by infusing face creams, soaps, and even powders with thorium and radium. Women across New York and Chicago would smear these glowing pastes onto their cheeks every night, completely unaware that the radium was slowly seeping through their pores and into their bloodstreams. Once inside, the radium acted like a calcium mimic, settling permanently into their bones. It began a slow process of internal rot, literally turning their jawbones into a brittle honeycomb-like structure. This wasn't just a beauty fail, it was a biological nightmare. Their teeth would begin to loosen and fall out, and in the most horrific cases, their entire lower jaws would simply detach or crumble away. These were the radium girls of the beauty parlors, victims of a glow that quite literally consumed them from within. But the radium craze was only the beginning of the darkness. If you wanted to achieve that iconic, slender, and boyish flapper silhouette that was all the rage in Hollywood, the solutions offered were even more stomach-turning. One of the most popular and effective diet aids sold in back-page advertisements across the U.S. involved swallowing a sanitized pill containing a dehydrated tapeworm egg. Once the pill reached the warm environment of the stomach, the parasite would hatch. It would grow inside the woman's intestinal tract, sometimes reaching terrifying lengths of 20 to 30 feet, consuming the host's vital nutrients before her body could even process them. Imagine the psychological horror of lying in bed at night, feeling something massive shifting and moving inside your own body, feeding on your meals. The weight would drop off, yes, but at the cost of chronic malnutrition, nausea, and organ damage. And the end of the treatment was even more visceral. To remove the fully grown wurg, doctors, or sometimes even the women themselves, would have to hold a bowl of warm milk in front of their open mouths for hours, hoping the starving creature would sense the food and slowly crawl out of their throat. It was a terrifying, primitive price to pay for a smaller waistline, a secret kept behind the closed doors of many elegant American homes. As the decade progressed, the obsession with permanent perfection led to the rise of brutal skincare procedures. To remove freckles, sunspots, or any perceived imperfection, women would undergo deep chemical peels using undiluted carbolic acid. This wasn't the gentle chemical exfoliation we have in modern spas. This was a violent chemical reaction. The acid would be applied directly to the face, literally burning off the top several layers of living tissue. During the process, the smell of burning flesh would often fill the high-end salons of Manhattan. If the mixture was left on for even a few seconds too long, or if the practitioner's hand slipped, the woman would be left with permanent weeping scars or skin so thin it would crack at a smile. Many spent weeks in dark rooms, their faces wrapped in bandages, praying that when the gauze came off, they would look like movie stars instead of burn victims. Then there were the eyes, the windows to the soul, which the 1920s demanded to be dreamy and dilated. To achieve this wide-eyed, enchanted look, some women turned to drops from Belladonna, a plant better known by its terrifying name, deadly nightshade. A few drops in each eye would cause the pupils to expand to an alluring size, but at a catastrophic cost. The poison would cause blurred vision, agonizing light sensitivity, and heart palpitations. With prolonged use, it led to permanent blindness. Yet the social pressure to conform to the standards set by silent film stars was so immense that thousands of women chose to walk through their lives half-blind and in constant pain just to maintain that haunting gaze. Even the most common items like mascara were unregulated death traps. In the early 30s, a popular product called Lash lure hit the American market, promising radiant eyes through permanent tinting. It contained a chemical called p-phenylethylamine, which is so toxic that it caused massive, violent allergic reactions. In recorded medical journals from the time, there are accounts of women whose eyelids became so swollen they resembled oranges. Some developed deep necrotic ulcers that slowly ate away at their corneas. One famous case involved a wealthy socialite whose eyes literally melted due to the secondary infections caused by the tint, leading to a slow, agonizing death that shocked the nation and finally led to the birth of the modern Food and Drug Administration. Perhaps the most tragic invention was the X-ray hair removal machine. Why endure the pain of waxing or the chore of shaving when science could solve the problem? The Tricho system, marketed as a safe and scientific miracle, involved sitting in front of a modified X-ray machine for minutes at a time. It worked perfectly. The hair would fall out and never return. But years later, the Tricho Blight appeared. The high doses of radiation caused aggressive facial cancers, leathery, discolored skin, and necrotic holes that opened up in the cheeks and necks of thousands of American women. The very technology meant to make them perfect was instead eating them alive. As we sit here in the quiet of the night, it's worth reflecting on the long shadows of the past. Those iconic photos of smiling flappers we see in history books were often masks for incredible hidden suffering. The history of beauty in America is not just a history of fashion, it is a history of survival against a world that demanded perfection at any cost. We look back at the radium-jawed girls and the tapeworm-infested socialites, not with judgment, but with a chilling realization of the lengths humans will go to be seen and accepted. The next time you look in the mirror, remember the women of the 1920s who stood in the dark, glowing with a light that was slowly extinguishing their lives. Sleep well, knowing that the ghosts of the beauty parlor are finally at rest, and the terrifying secrets they carried are now safely etched into the silent, warning pages of our history.